Angela from the website naturallivingalchemy.ca. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you the second part of the introduction to the Doctrine of Signatures, environment and the sensory approach. If you missed the first part of the video in this series, that's okay. Just go back and watch it after this one. You see, the pieces all fit together, but I find that the order is not the most important part. It's actually the pieces themselves. This reminds me of a quote from Aristotle that I would like for you to apply in whatever way you're feeling called to do so. And just begin to reflect on what this means to you. With the quote, short, simple. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Okay? I just want you to keep that in mind as we are exploring the doctrine of signatures. I would like to mention that I do have a full written blog article linked in the description box below if you want to go and check that out. It's just another way that you can go over the information that I am going to be sharing with you just in a few minutes. And one more thing, I have a book recommendation that I also will have linked in the description box below if you want to go and pick up a copy for yourself. And it is this lovely lady right here, The Language of Plants, A Guide to the Doctrine of Signatures. It is by Julia Graves. And this book is for anybody who is wanting to just learn more about the language of plants. Now, one final thing before we begin, I need to just do a little bit of a disclaimer here for the social media platform that I am on. I am not a doctor. None of the things that are on this channel are medical advice. It is for informational purposes only, and always consult your doctor before adding any protocols into your regimen. All right, so I hope you can see our presentation and everything is sharing properly. But let's begin. So one signature that you can get from plants is actually directly tied to the environment in which you find the plant growing in. To be specific and clear, though, I mean the environment that you would typically find the plant growing in. I'm not saying that there isn't something about observing maybe a plant you planted in your garden or a botanical garden in your community, but I'm talking about when you encounter a plant in nature. Okay? These are the signatures we're going to be talking about mainly today. So one thing that I do want you to keep in mind that I'm just going to go over a couple environments that you might encounter, but I just want you to keep in mind that this is not an exhaustive list. And it's of course going to be depending on where you live, if these are typical environments that you would come across. But what's important to notice here is that these signatures are open to your personal interpretation, and it is going to require a little bit of a use in your imagination. So let's just go over a couple different environments in which you might encounter depending on where you live. And I'm just going to show you how they would work on your body just to give you another piece of this magical puzzle. So let's first talk about plants that are going to grow in water, around riverbeds, and swamps, in or around. Okay. So there's a couple different signatures that we might encounter in this type of environment. So one signature would be that plants that grow in or near water have mastered dampness, and therefore they are healing to the bodily systems that involve water management. What does that mean? Well, what organs or systems in your body relate to water management? A couple would be the kidneys, the bladder, or the lymphatic system. So, what would this mean? Basically, it's pointing to these plants having an affinity to the organs or systems that relate to water management. So, what this is saying is this is the part of the body that these medicines are actually going to travel to. A signature of a plant growing in a swampy area could point to treatments of diseases caused by wetness. Okay, let's think cough. So, plants growing in damp or wet places would correspond to diseases caused by excess dampness, such as respiratory issues. So I know in our first video, and I'm going to share this with you here too, we are not needing another allopathic approach to plant medicine. What that would mean would this plant is good for that approach. Okay. However, the land of paradox that we find ourselves in, I am going to be sharing with you certain signatures and what they're pointing the plant to be good for. But that's just to show you kind of how these pieces go together. I know, kind of confusing, but that's just the way that we're going to do it today. And I hope that this does make sense. Okay, so let's begin. Let's first talk about a plant called gravel root. So, this plant you are going to find growing in swampy areas. And what that is going to tell us is this plant actually has an affinity for the kidneys. So, what about a plant like a hydrangea that grows like on the side of the stream? Well, that is also pointing to an affinity for the kidneys. So, our next plant is boneset. And boneset grows in wet soils. Okay. And this one has an affinity for your joints. Now, think about this for a second. If your joints are dry, how would you know if your joints are dry? Popping, cracking sounds. Okay. Maybe something like bone set would be a good remedy for you to try out. So, next, plants that grow in like damp, shady, cool valleys treat damp, cold, rheumatic, and respiratory conditions, such as that found in Angelica. So, next, let's talk about plants that grow in kind of like a mucky type soil. That is actually a signature for mucus excretions. So, our example here is eucalyptus. And one function of eucalyptus in swampy areas is that it's actually sanitizing those areas, it's sanitizing that environment. So, how would that actually translate into the body? Well, eucalyptus cleanses out the swampy parts of the body, treating inflammation in the urogenital tract. If a plant is growing on the bank of a clear pond or fast moving brook, that is a signature that that plant acts as a diuretic. Okay, it moves fluid in your body. So, one example is horsetail, which grows in low, wet, sandy areas and has an affinity for your kidneys. So, next environment we're going to talk about would be kind of like sandy or gravelly soils. So, if you come across a plant that is growing in wet, rocky, or gravelly soil, it's the stone and the gravel itself that is the signature. Okay. This is because plants that are growing in sandy or gravelly soils can help your body adjust the solid liquid balance of the body itself. So, what this would do would be stuff like healing deposits of like stone formations or arthritis. So, for that, we could turn to parsley. Now, one thing that I would like to mention about herbs, and especially those ones that we use in the culinary arts, and we sometimes are drawn to these plants for their healing purposes, right, in our cooking. Well, if you're having a hard time with like maybe an arthritic flare up, adding a few sprigs of parsley isn't going to do much. Okay. It'll add some wonderful flavor to your meal, but if you're actually wanting to get to more of the healing properties of these plants, it's the amount that you need to take to actually begin to see these benefits. So, yes, while adding a few sprigs of parsley would definitely make it taste better, right? But if you're wanting to help with your arthritis, you're going to actually need to do something like a tea or an infusion, like a decoction or a tincture to get the result that you're looking for. So, another thing though, it takes time for these things to work themselves out sometimes. Okay. We live in a society that wants things like yesterday. Okay. So plants, though, remind us that everything comes in the appropriate size seasons and cycles. Okay. Well, that was a mouthful. But I hope that you understand what I'm trying to say. We can get so upset that the plants aren't working when maybe we're not taking enough of that medication in our body. It's just something to think about. Okay, now let's talk about another group of plants called stone breakers. And these plants do just that in the body. They have the ability to break up stone formations. So let's think about what kind of different stones we can actually get in our body. Kidney and gallstones come to mind. So our prime example here is sassafrage. So if you want to just kind of look, I tried to get a picture that showed, first off, the environment that it was growing in, not the easiest thing to do. I live in well, the prairies of Canada and it's winter. So I actually could not necessarily go out to my environment to take all these lovely pictures for you. But if you just kind of look at this one and just see how this is starting to actually grow out of the ground through the stones itself. So I had a personal experience with gallstones and I didn't use this plant, but I used a tea called, I'm going to probably butcher the name of the tea, Sanka pradera, which worked wonderfully. And its nickname is literally Stonebreaker. So I can speak from experience. I drank this tea. Um, I had it I want to say 2 to 3 times a day. All right. Over the course of probably about a month or however long it took me to go through my jar. And they cleared out. Okay. It broke them up and they are no longer the issues that they used to be. So if you are finding stone formations in your body to be a problem, look to the plants that have the ability to grow and break through the stones. Okay, so I know we talked about eucalyptus already, but let's bring her back. So eucalyptus would be a plant that grows in a wetland. Okay. So it can treat soggy type coughs and colds in the body. Pretty neat. Think about when we're sick, eucalyptus reminds me of Vicks. Okay. What does that do? It helps you breathe. It is doing something to the lungs. What else can that environment be a signature of? Well, let's think about the plant lemongrass. Now, lemongrass itself grows in mosquito-ridden swamps. So, what is that a signature for? Lemongrass can repel mosquitoes. If a plant has mastered how to grow in a specific environment, that can help you master some type of environment that is going on in your body. All right. So, what about plants that are growing out in just like open sunlight? Well, that is an environment signature for that plant's warming and drying properties. It is as if they are storing the warmth of the sun itself within their bodies, sharing that gift with whoever uses or ingests them. So, our example here is calendula. And just look at how just warm and like, oh, I just feel all like warm and bubbly and like giddy inside just looking at the beautiful color of this plant. Now let's talk about a desert type environment. So just look at the ways that these types of plants actually thrive without water. And that is something that they can teach us. And our example here is aloe. So, one thing that you can do that I have never personally tried, so I cannot guarantee it's going to work, but you can avoid heat stroke by washing your body in a water that has some of the aloe plant actually crushed in it. Some of the leaves have been like just sitting and crushed in this water, and you put this water on your body. Don't try it at home, but I hear it works wonders in certain parts of the world. This particular method came from Haiti. And I just thought that it was really fascinating as somebody who I burn a lot. I am, well, a nice shade of pale, if you haven't noticed. So I actually want to give this a try because I sometimes avoid the sun for not wanting to get a sunburn, but maybe I can just lean to the plants and maybe get some reprieve from a sunburn this summer. I guess we'll see. But anyway, that is just a few of the different environmental signatures that you might come across. I do hope that you kind of see how some of these are starting to make sense, like especially the ones that are growing by fast moving brooks. Water, your body, your kidneys, right? Some of these things can be well, hidden in plain sight that we forget that this plant world is just trying to communicate with us how it wants to help us. So, next, let's talk about the second part of our presentation here, and that is the sensory approach. So, what that means is this is the information that you could be getting when you apply your senses to looking at signatures. Let's begin with smell. Smell is tied directly to taste. We know that generally sweet things also smell sweet. But on the other side of that coin, have you ever taken like a really, really deep breath of something like stinky garbage on a hot day, and then like you swear you can actually taste it? Well, that's just because I'm sorry, it's a terrible example, but it is like really the best one that I could come up with. So, this is because the aroma is essentially hitting the back of our throats and it's hitting the nasal cavities that is encountering our scent receptors. So, what happens next is actually rather primal. The scent that is combined via the element of air is also tied to the element of ether. So what that's doing is bringing those scents into our nose where it enters our bloodstream and it actually begins to affect our limbic part of our brain. Okay, so what is this doing? It is actually triggering something physiological, okay, which is a change in a hormonal response. So think about the realm of aromatherapy. They know this. Okay. They know that smells can affect an entire mood. Have you ever smelled like a really nice cologne or perfume on your partner and then suddenly your whole mood shifts? Well, that is the hormonal response that actually shifted your mood. All right. So, how do these scents actually play out into how can they be signatures for us is what I'm trying to say. Okay. So, plants and flowers that have like a heavy or like just dull smells, and if you've noticed, they actually begin to bit dull our senses, making us feel kind of sleepy. And our example here is the Oriental lily, which there are a lot of people who have shared that this plant has a little bit of a narcotic type effect on at least some people, right? Go and try it. If you can find yourself an Oriental lily, take a just a nice deep inhale and see what effects it has on your body. Okay. So there's some plants and flowers that actually have like a fresh smell, and that fresh smell actually begins to sharpen our senses and essentially, in a way, wake us up. Peppermint is a really, really good example. Just take like a big whiff of peppermint. I find that it definitely kind of, the Oriental lily might have made us like relaxed. This one, definitely make us like sit up straighter, is kind of what I want to keep on trying to do. So that's our signature. Even just look at sitting up straighter for a second. Look at the stalks of this plant. They are calling to attention. That is what I'm rise up like a ludicrous song is now in my head, but whatever. These signatures, these plants, they are they are talking to us in so many ways. They are giving us so many different messages, okay, that we miss them. So that is why I am bringing all of this information to you today. And I'm really just hoping that you can start to strengthen your experience and your relationship with the environment you find yourself in. So, apologize for that tangent, but sorry, not sorry. So, plants and flowers that have a strong aromatic quality point to a presence of essential oils. Now, the signature here is that the plants that are having like these strong aromatic qualities have the presence of these strong essential oils, are showing that they have antiseptic qualities and they are warming, which can help move blood and stagnation. Tea tree is our example here of what comes to mind. Tea tree, it's really good in, I put it in a lot of homemade cleaning products that I'm making, that if you are curious on how to make some non-toxic cleaning products for your household, comment down below and I can definitely share some different recipes and ideas that I use in case you're curious. So now we are going to move to our next scent, which is taste. Now, instead of giving you a whole bunch of plants that fit the tastes, I am going to encourage you to just go out and taste various herbs. Okay? Taste different flowers, taste different plants with the intention to see what you can pick up from these tastes. What might you be able to pick up from these tastes, though? Let's talk now about taste and action, as you can see on this little chart that I have on our screen. And I'm going to kind of break these down a little bit more in a second, but I'm just going to tell you the taste and the potential action, because keep in mind, these are not going to be the only actions these tastes do, but it is a starting point for our studies. So a sweet or pleasant taste points to an action of toning, harmonizing, and moistening. What does it mean, toning? Okay, I'm going to give you an example of, this is our tissue. Let's pretend this just is a tissue in our body. So you can see through, it's toned, it's relaxed. Okay, it's lax. What a sweet or pleasant tasting plant will do is kind of an astringent. Okay, we're going to talk about that in a second. And it kind of just like brings these closer together. It knits the tissues back together. Okay, there are certain different diseases, different sicknesses, different illnesses that we might encounter that are caused because our tissues are lax like this instead of being nice and tight. Okay, anyway, moving on. We have the bitter flavor. The action the bitter flavor is telling us is it drains and dries. Sour. Sour points to an astringent, or it has the ability to tone. Remember, loose tissues, tight tissues. So salty. That action points to something that purges or softens the tissues through purging the fluid sometimes. Our next taste would be acrid, spicy, or pungent. That shows an action that it disperses and moves. Okay? Up and out or down and in, depending on the other signatures that you're going to need to look for in the plant. Our last flavor, bland. So the action that the bland flavor is teaching us is that it leaches dampness and therefore is beginning to promote urination within the body. All right, let's explore these each just a little bit deeper. Sweet. When we say sweet, I do not mean sweet like sugar, I mean sweet like carbs. That is pointing to the plant being nourishing, so it's nutritive, and it has a demulsive effect on the body. Demulcent means it moistens the body. So, a demulcent herb, that is going to tell you that this herb has an affinity for the mucous membranes that are open to the outside world. What are those? Specifically, your digestive system. It is both open both ends to the outside world. Okay, good example. Another would be the respiratory system, or even the female reproductive system has an opening into the outside world. We need these mucous membranes to protect these parts, these systems, these organs. All right. So the sweet taste, though, having an affinity to the mucous membranes can also help support your nervous system, your joints, ligaments, and your cartilage. So there is a lot that the sweet taste does. Apart from, in my opinion, just taste good. What do I mean sweet by like carbs though? A piece of white bread to me tastes sweet. Okay? Sweet like carbs. It doesn't have the same sweetness as like I know Henry bar would have, my favorite chocolate bar of, the moment. But can you see what I mean? The difference between sweet like sugar and sweet like carbs, though? Okay, anyway, I don't need to keep sharing more of my personal preferences. Let's talk about the taste of bitter. Bitter points to drying because it is moving fluids through the body and is therefore increasing an overall net drying effect on the constitution if you take it long term. So, this taste is pointing to liver remedies because the bitter taste itself is actually increasing the flow of bile. So, that's showing us that it has an affinity to the liver. It is also cholagogue, which means it increases bile secretions from the gallbladder itself. All right, our next taste is sour, because sour is kind of interesting depending upon the dose. So, in small doses, sour is cooling and astringent. In high doses, though, it can be heating. So, let's think of the body for a moment. And what is the most sour part of your body? It is your stomach. So think of heartburn, which is just a raising of stomach acid. It's too much. Okay. So sour is cooling in small doses, what that would mean. And I just wanted to bring this up because I think it's actually really interesting. On a hot day, have you ever had like a nice big glass of like lemonade and you just felt refreshed? Sour taste. It helped cool you off. Kind of neat, hey? Our next flavor that I would like to talk about is salty. So, salty points to a signature that the plant has a diuretic action because water follows salt and salt dissolves in water. So this taste relates to the kidneys and your bodily fluids. So these salts, these plants can soften because they have the ability to purge moisture from the tissues within the whole body. Generally, we think of diuretics as something that just makes you have to go to the bathroom, but it is actually so much more than that. You could use a salty flavored plant to treat something like cold or like a damp arthritic pain. Okay? Not just something that makes you pee, although It does do that quite well. It can help take fluids from other parts of your body and just help drain them in that way. This flavor, what I'm hearing, we need to quit pigeonholing our flavors as much as we're pigeonholing our herbs. Hmm. That's just a little bit of a salty message from salt, isn't it? Okay, let's talk about acrid. Now, the acrid flavor, you might not know what it is, but you probably know what it is. It's that taste that you get in the back of your throat of like the taste of bile after you've been sick. Okay, it's the best way that I can describe it. So, that taste, though, points to something really interesting. It is showing you that that plant is spasmolytic or antispasmodic, and it works on relaxing overly tight tissues. Okay. The last plant taste that I would like to talk about is pungent. Now, pungent, you could also call it spicy, but not all pungent plants are spicy, and not all spicy plants are pungent. But they do tend to go hand in hand quite a bit. So what is this telling you? What is the action of a pungent flavor? Well, it clears congestion. Specifically clears congestion in the respiratory system as well as enhancing circulation and stimulating blood flow. Have you ever eaten a really spicy meal or even watched somebody eat something that's really spicy and then you notice that their nose starts to run? Like there's a clearing of a congestion that's happening. You notice that their face is getting a little bit red. They're starting to sweat. Well, these are all actions of the pungent flavor. Okay. And think about maybe sometimes when we're sick and we're looking to clear congestion. Maybe this is the flavor that we could lean towards. See what happens. Okay, so let's now move on to touch. Let's touch on touch for a moment. So, plants that are sticky. Well, this is a signature for sticky mucus. So, our example is Grandelia, which is actually a great herb for asthma. Okay. It's really, really good at helping clear out that just sticky mucus that can be causing some of your asthmatic problems. Keeping in mind, I am not a doctor. If your asthma is caused from something else, this might not be the one that you want to go for. But if it is, maybe it is. Okay. Next, let us talk about plants that are slippery. Plants that are slippery contain mucus, which is healing to your mucosa. So it has an affinity to all of your mucous membranes within your body. And you can just tell that because it's just a little bit slippery when you actually touch the plant. So next, let's talk about plants that actually retain their moisture after harvesting. That is a signature that they are hard to dry and therefore have moistening properties. Excuse me, our example here is artichoke. Now, did you know that artichoke, if you dehydrate it, it actually has the risk of rehydrating itself as soon as it comes into contact with the air? Just something that I find to be super interesting. Okay, so that concludes part two of our presentation. And it's really just hard to decide where to stop with a lot of these things because I could talk about them for hours because it is so fascinating, at least in my opinion. Comment down below and let me know what you think. Are you finding this stuff to be interesting? Are you finding it to be helpful? I would really, really love to hear your takeaways. And I want to just know, how is this information shifting the way you are choosing to look at the natural world around you? So, next week, I am going to be going over part 3 of our introduction to the Doctrine of Signatures. We are going to be going over organ and disease signatures. Ooh, so make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss that. And be sure to hit that like button if you wouldn't mind. Maybe share this video with somebody else who you think might enjoy it or benefit from it. And again, subscribe to the channel if you wouldn't mind. I am really just trying to grow my presence here, and it would mean the world to me if just share, just a like, just a follow. Okay. And if you're not tired of me yet, I am also on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest, so you can find me over there as well. I would really love to just start connecting with with you, with those who are finding my videos and, you know, let's see what different things we can start to share with each other. So I will leave it with that. I would like you to thank you for spending your time with me today, and may you find peace wherever you are.